which is death and grace. Okay, so that's very simple. I'll let you know. I'm not sure if I'm flattered yet, but I'm thinking about it. I think it kind of lets people know it's built that way.
I'm going to let people trickle in, and I'm going to go give the people outside a warning, and then we'll get started.
I'm reminded of the they're showing stuff that is crazy. My mom discovered this. I'm not looking. The stores don't mean anything. Maybe I'm looking for the other things. I discovered it. I'm looking for much. So the fact that I'm still breathing is definitely it's wild.
Hello, everybody. How we doing? All right. You're in the right place for San Diego Python. Thanks for coming. I'm David. I'm one of the organizers. Yeah, it's good to be here. It's good to be back. I feel it's a pretty good turnout. Thanks for coming. I do want to thank Qualcomm for having us. They've generously let us be here, and the engineering development team, and specifically Drew and Urivon, they're the two people who let you in the locked door and speak with the security people and make sure that they know that we're here. I also want to thank my co-organizer Jeremy, who has moved because he's over there now. Jeremy helps line up all the speakers and everything. So yeah, thanks, Jeremy. And I want to thank Neo4j. They're the ones who are providing pizza to the meetup. Neo4j provides a graph database. And for certain types of operations, it can be an order of magnitude faster than a traditional relational database. And you can download it and run it yourself, or you can get a managed version in the cloud of your choice. Cool. And Jason's not here. I would let Jason give a few words, but Jason from Neo4j is he's attending some other conference or something. So cool. I think I had a conference on my list that was today, but I removed it because we're past it. Anyway, I have a couple small announcements, and then we'll get to speakers. If this is your first time at San Diego Python, you didn't know this. There's a Saturday meetup. It meets online on Discord. If you go to sandiegopython.org, which is our website, has links to all the things. One of the things is the Discord. And the Discord is where the Saturday meetup is. It's at 10 a.m. It's online. It's a little bit different format than this one, whereas this one has like speakers and a lineup, and a specific person is like showing something on a laptop. The meeting at 10 a.m. on Saturdays is a little more, it's a little more free form. Sometimes people break out into specific groups. There is sometimes a presentation, but it's not like a always kind of a thing. So yeah, check it out. And if we ever have other events, you can always find it on our Meetup page or on our website. The website, which I mentioned, sandiegopython.org, has links to all of our things, like the code of conduct, the YouTube channel where we're live streaming stuff, the Discord. There's a sign-up thing to be a speaker. Very important. Very important. I'm going to mention that multiple times tonight. You too can become a speaker. And I'm highly motivated to line up speakers, and Jeremy is also highly motivated to line up speakers, because we are the speakers of last resort when we do not line up enough speakers. Highly motivated, let me tell you. Okay, so please do it. And it's not too hard. You can just do a 5 to 7 minute talk. 100% of people who have spoken at San Diego Python survived. Critical metrics, you know. Yeah. So you'll make it. And all skill levels, we're not looking for, you know, it can be a beginner aimed talk, an intermediate aimed talk, advanced talk, all great talks. Cool. I do want to mention a couple upcoming conferences. If you haven't booked your ticket to this one, it might be a little late because it's this weekend. North Bay Python is this weekend. It's in Petaluma, California. I know a lot of people from San Diego used to go to that one. You going this year? No. Okay. Well, a lot of people from San Diego used to go to North Bay Python. It's like a one-day conference in Petaluma. It's good. Oh, go ahead.
It's in a barn.
It's in a barn?
Yeah, it's not in a theater anymore. There's barn cats, and it's outside. Like,
Didn't the theater, it was getting acquired or something?
I have no idea.
Okay.
They're in a barn now.
They're in a barn? All right. Well, it's key. All right. I mean, there might be tickets available. Check it out. If you want a Bay Area conference that is a little bit different, Pi Bay is in September 21st. First of all, there is more time to actually get tickets for that one because it's a couple months away. That one's in San Francisco. I know like a bunch of like bigger companies attend that one, so it's probably a little bit of a different feel. But if you're around and you're in San Francisco on September 21st, that could be a thing. And then, always worth talking, DjangoCon US, sadly not in San Diego, but it's in Durham, North Carolina this year. And it is September 22nd, or it starts on September 22nd. I think that's the start of the tutorials, and then the conference is a couple days after that. But yeah, check it out. DjangoCon US is always a great conference. Again, I wanted to highlight that you can be a speaker. And then my last kind of announcement is I just want to mention our sponsor who sometimes gives me giveaways to give away, but I don't have one this month. And this is JFrog. JFrog is a DevOps platform for continuous releases. And for example, like if you needed a PyPI inside your company firewall, their product does that among other things. I'm wearing a shirt from it, so yeah. Cool. That's it for announcements, short relatively. And so we'll jump to our first speaker, which is Amy Szczepanski, who's going to talk to us about more resilient use of SQLite. And hopefully it just works, the AV.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy. And so, okay. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit about SQLite. If you're not familiar with SQLite, you can kind of guess by its name that it's a lightweight relational database. And I grabbed this sample database off the internet. This one's about an imaginary video store. But what we're going to pay attention to is that we're looking at a particular table. It's the actor table. And I did a pretty straightforward query against my actor table just so you could sort of see what sort of information is in it. I said, grab all the columns, grab me the first 5 rows. And my columns, I got an actor ID, a first name, a last name, and a last update. And so I just wanted you to kind of see what sort of information is in this database table, so that way we can look at what happens if we work with it in Python. So anyway, straightforward table. So now we're going to see what happens if we look at it in Python. And I'm going to do it in the REPL here because what we're going to be looking at is fairly straightforward. And I only got 5 to 7 minutes, so we're not going to get too far in depth. And I don't like slide talks. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in pretty print, because we want things to be pretty. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in SQLite 3. Can we see this even though it's at the bottom of the window? We good? Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to this database, and we're going to see the same information that we had seen from the command line with SQLite 3, but we're going to see it in Python. And so what I'm going to say is my connection is going to be what happens if I take SQLite 3 and I connect to my database. And so my rows that I'm going to be grabbing, so all of this is just to get us to where we had before with these rows from the database. And so my rows are going to be as what happens if I take my connection and I execute a query against it. And then I'm going to grab all my rows. So now we can pretty print. Oh no, what's going on? Oh, I called it row instead of rows. My goodness. All right. I need to call it rows because there's multiple rows. That's okay. Now we can pretty print my rows. Oh, how many rows did I grab? My goodness. All right, that's okay. There we go. It's always what happens with the live demo. Okay, there we go. So here we have my rows, and this is a list of tuples. Everybody, when we learn Python, tells us about how the tuple is the immutable list. Really what the tuple is it's the record. We have these rows in my database. And so before, when I was looking at this database and I was looking at it in terms of SQLite, it would tell us, oh, you got your ID number, your first name, your last name, and your updated at. But you notice here, I don't have those column names here. And so if I wanted to say, oh, print out all the last names of all of my actors, I would say, okay, so for each row in my rows, and then I have to be like, okay, the last name. So I'm going to go position 0, position 1, position 2. And so that's how I print out my last name. But what happens is if your colleagues go and change the structure of your database, position 2 may no longer be the last name. If you are reading through the code and you're saying position 2, it could be anything. And so you can have problems. And in fact, I encountered a problem because position 2 was not what I thought it was going to be. And this was in production. And so that was a little bit surprising. But fortunately, SQLite gives us some tools that we can work with it. And so the first thing that we could do is I can say, what sort of properties does a connection have? And one of the useful things that a connection has is a row factory. In a row factory, it builds rows. So I could say, oh, my connection, it's row factory. And it's really nice. What it did for us is SQLite has one called row. And so I can go and do my query again. And I can go and pretty print my rows. Oh no, what are these rows? These are not pretty rows. But, you know, there's a little bit of trade-off here. I can say, oh, for each row in my rows. And at least now, I can index it by the names. So we had a trade-off. Before I could look at my rows, it was my list of tuples, but I had trouble knowing what to index it by. Here, I have my rows, and they're these weird row objects, but I can index it by the name. We can do better. If we are lucky, I still have this in my clipboard. Oh, yes, I do. So what happens is I can define another factory. And I got this factory off the internet, so I wasn't going to type it in real time. But this, my dict factory, my dictionary factory. So what I can do is I can say my factory is going to be my dictionary factory. And so I can go and do my query again. And I can pretty print my rows. And now it's a dictionary. I can print it out. I know what it is. I can access my things by name. And I can work with it in a way that I'm less likely to make mistakes. And then my use of SQLite is more resilient. So I will close my connection and yield the floor. So we questions?
I'm still having an AV problem on my end, but at least everybody here got it. Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Steve Gaughran. And Steve is going to talk to us about From Zero to Hero, a Python acolyte's journey to become reasonably proficient. All right. Hopefully I get the AV sorted out. Spent so much time on it, and then like something wrong happened. So you should be able to.
Got an HDMI here.
Yeah, you want this one.
Yep.
Yep. And then what you see up, or what you see on those two screens there is the same as what's there.
All right.
It's supposed to be what I see, but it's not. Okay, well that came right up for you.
That is not my screen.
Probably screen two.
Excuse me. Is there a button I press or anything? Or?
So you probably need to go to your display settings, because this is probably screen 2 and this is screen 1. So if you hit slideshow, it might just work.
Let's find out together.
Yeah, we'll find out together. Nope, it's slideshowed onto this thing. So let's see. You could drag this window over to the other screen, so that would be an option, but then you can't see it, or you need to go into the display settings and like mirror the displays.
Apologies, I stole my daughter's Chromebook for this presentation.
We're having AV problems on my end too, so sorry.
Marvelous. All right, hold on. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Mirror built-in display. There we go. All right. We did it. Yes, I stole my daughter's Chromebook for this. She told me explicitly not to look at anything at all. And if you know my daughter, you know that is no idle threat. Hi, everyone. My name's Steve. You told me my last name. It looks like somebody threw the alphabet down a flight of stairs. I'm here today to talk to you about the fact that I am a new Python programmer. I have been learning fairly recently, for reasons we'll go over quickly. Yeah, let's just dive right into it. Here's the agenda for today. Keep moving. All right. This is me. This is who I am. I'm 41 years old. I've got a family, 2 kids, a wife, and ancient cat. It's a miracle this guy's still alive, frankly. I think it's spite that's keeping him going. I've been a stay-at-home dad for 10 years. Previous to that, I was a proofreader, an editor, and writer. And yes, I am a podcaster. That's not just because I'm a middle-aged man. I make a family podcast for kids. Top 1% in the world, actually. Yeah, woo! Education, some college, and yeah. Let's keep going. Why software? It's time to enter the workforce. My kids are old enough now. I've got a teenager and a tween-ager, which is a term I learned recently and hate, but it is what it is. But they don't need a parent home all the time anymore. And my son is starting to require 2 dinners at night, which I'm sure some of you can relate to. Why software? Frankly, editorial wages since I left have remained exactly the same. And inflation, as we all know, has just continued to grow and grow. It's rough out there. Software development can be reasonably lucrative as a career, and it doesn't always require a college degree, which is great because I don't want to go back to college. I did my time. Why Python? There's a very simple reason for Python. When I looked at all of the coding, all the different languages, Python made sense. That's all there is to it. I looked at it and went, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that. I'm not a complete Luddite. I have worked with computers most of my life. My family got our first family computer when I was a kid was a 386 with 4 megabytes of RAM, which the salesman said was more than we would ever need. Yeah, so built some websites in high school back when CSS was still considered bloat, and build computers, and I am my family's tech support and have been for 20 years. So started to teach myself, and by teach myself, I mean I had the internet teach me. I did Udemy's 100 Days of Boot Camp, didn't get all the way through because frankly the whole thing fizzled out by day 63. Went on YouTube more recently, been using AI. I would not recommend it for a rank beginner because frankly it's very useful as a tool, but as a teacher, it's wrong a lot, and which I'm sure people here have all. Abraham gave a great presentation last week about it, but yeah. We had a family friend who happened to be a software test engineer. He's been using Python for 20 years, Scott Allman, very great guy. And my cousin is a senior Python programmer. He's worked for Twitter before it got weird and a couple other big places. So let's talk about, this is mostly about a project that I decided to make. I wanted to make a project that I would use, and not only use, but other people that I knew would use. So I made the Hunt Showdown Random Hunter Selector. Hunt Showdown is a video game with a lot of skins in it, like dress up your character pretty. But there's a lot of them, and if you have a lot of them, maybe just choose one at random. I wanted to create something complex, as opposed to I had some experience with Beautiful Soup and API requests, and I made a very, very basic Flask website. But this is, I wanted something that would showcase my understanding of Python fundamentals that would be useful, and it shouldn't be too difficult. So the scope, I created a scope. What I wanted it to do, randomly select hunters, usable by the layman. This is really important. My friends don't code. They can't use a terminal. If it's anything more difficult than double-clicking an icon, it's not going to happen. I wanted to have proper documentation because I was an editor, and you need to document your stuff, for the love of God. And I want it to be easily distributed. Luckily, GitHub is a thing, so that's pretty good. So what do I need? I need a library. I need the random library, where it's a random selection thing. At this point when I started doing this, I didn't know anything about the database, but I did know about JSON files, so okay, we can update a JSON file to save things. tkinter to make a user interface, a lot more on that coming up. PyDoc to document the thing, and PyInstaller because, once again, I needed to be able to double click on it in a Windows interface, and I needed it to just work without any questions. So PyInstaller is a great little library, very easy to use, that will do that for you. What happened? tkinter happened to me. I don't know if anybody here has used tkinter to make a user interface, but I'm here to tell you, please don't. All right, so everybody in here probably heard me say, oh, I'm going to make this thing. And they're like, yeah, that's 5 lines of code. That is not a big deal. And you're right. If you are a programmer, this is not a hard thing. You have a dictionary. You may use a list comprehension, and then to make a list, you select randomly from the list, you print whatever the selection is. You're done. Congratulations. Instead, I use tkinter. And what was 5 lines of code became 16 functions, 315 lines of code, a lot of swearing, and it's ugly. Most of it was because of this function here, the 80-20 rule. You guys have heard the 80-20 rule before? Basically that, 80% of your effort's going to go into 20% of the product. Yeah, that's this guy right here. This guy, I didn't accidentally delete it after I wrote it, but I did something wrong, and then I rewrote the whole thing, but I forgot how I did it the first time. The good part of this, the silver lining, is that it forced me to use GitHub and learn how to use Git. So that was great. I'm really happy it happened. All right, so what were the other hurdles besides tkinter, but mostly still tkinter? Basic inexperience. I'm new. I don't know anything. And so things would happen, and I'd freak out. I'd be like, how do I access my dictionary again? Where do I plug the thing in? What's going on? What's happening? Yeah. Documentation. So tkinter has documentation. It's not good, but it's there. This caused me a huge problem later down the line because of, well, basically there's 2 different ways to populate a list that you can select from, and one of them you can pre-populate and one of them you can't. And I didn't find that out for hours why my code wasn't working. Turns out it was kind of me and it kind of wasn't me. Let's talk about something else that you guys may not be familiar with, because I see there's some seasoned people here. And this is not a programming specific problem. This is just a life experience problem. People who are up here and have done the work for 20 years do not see things the same way that people down here do, and it creates problems. There's lingo. There's expectation of knowledge. So when you search for something, it becomes a problem. This is obviously hyperbole, but not as much as you think when you're a new guy and you're just trying to find the answer to, what am I doing wrong? The result is, this is a little GIF I made of the thing. As you can see, it's not pretty, but it works. It saves your pre-selected thing every time you load it up. It randomly selects from a list, a checklist made in tkinter. The result is it works as intended. Everybody I had downloaded was able to use it easily. All points of the scope were achieved. User feedback was used to improve, and some user feedback was ignored because, frankly, you can't listen to everybody. There's no pleasing everybody. Is it pretty? No, it's not. So what did we learn? Always read the documentation before you get started. Just because you think that something works a certain way doesn't mean it does. Don't ask me about list boxes versus check boxes, because that was my big thing. Simple is not the same thing as easy. I've got kids. You'd think I knew that already, and yet here we are. AI. Let's talk about AI very briefly. Super useful if you don't know how to frame a question properly. Google is weird and gets weirder by the year. And I know that it has its own AI now that forces an answer on you, but yeah. And Stack Overflow is also weird because it can be very hostile at times. Some of the people there, like that gap I was talking about, it's made manifest, and layered on top of it is the internet being the internet, which is anonymous people just kind of being jerks to you. So, but I also learned that, oh, I can do this. Like, I did it. It was a success, albeit a strange one. So, what else did we learn? What was I thinking? What could I have done differently? Why tkinter? Well, because the Udemy course I took use tkinter. So I use tkinter because that's what I was familiar with. That's it. That's the whole thing. This is probably a lot of people are asking this question. Why didn't you just make a web app, Steve? You could use modern web tools. You could have a clean UI with modern things. Yeah. I didn't think about it until I was almost done. And I don't really know a lot of web development, really. So I would have had to have learned a whole new skill set on top of it. I made a cheater version of this using AI because I don't know JavaScript, and frankly, I don't want to learn JavaScript. And some of you are like, yay, but if you're using Flask already, why didn't you just use Python when the Flask? Well, that's another thing I learned. So we're learning here. And despite not knowing JavaScript, I know enough about coding, having proofed SGML coding in the past and learning Python now. I know enough about it so that when I put it in the thing and I run it and it doesn't work, I can look at it and go, I think I know what's wrong. So that was good. Am I going to convert it? I don't know. Maybe. I have to learn Django. So if anybody has any good Django learning resources, let me know. Oh, I even put a bullet for that. Look how smart I am. I am scared. All right. That's the whole thing, pretty much. Q&A, if anybody has any questions, I might even have answers. If you want to review the presentation, there it is. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting with AI that you said you have learned how to use it to help phrase the question. I've used it different ways, but I'm curious if you have like an example of like how it helped you figure out the right question.
Yeah. So let's go back to list boxes versus check boxes. The documentation, like I said, was not great. So a lot of times when you're, let me see how to phrase this properly. Not just in coding, but in general, I've found that the key to getting a good answer is knowing what question to ask. It's like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy where the answer is 42. It's exactly the same thing. I didn't ask the right question, so I'm getting the wrong answer. And if you ask the wrong question, you're going to get led down a rabbit hole that will frequently be frustrating. With AI, sometimes it's developed to the point where you can say what you want to do, and it can provide you with, oh, well, here's a way to do it. And at that point, that's a good stepping stone rather than going on Stack Overflow or something and asking a question, getting the wrong answer, and then having a lot of angry Overflow nerds yell at you. Not that that's happened to me. Yeah.
Are you in the San Diego Python Discord?
I am. Yes. Great. Speaking of which, there's my contact info. If anybody wants to get a hold of me, email. I'm on Discord, LinkedIn, GitHub. My podcast is there. If you've got kids, it's a family podcast. Yeah. Any other questions? Perfect. Thank you. Class is dismissed.
Still struggling with AV issues on my end. So you guys everything's working great in the room, but not on the stream. Anyway, our last speaker for the live stream, which live stream's not working great anyway, is going to be Hobson. Our final speaker is in person only. So Hobson Lane is going to talk to us about 5 AI bug bounties in 5 minutes. Would you, when you plug in and things work, I'm going to unplug and replug all the things. I feel like this needs a Windows fix where you just unplug this, and unplug this, and unplug this, and then I'm going to hope that just everything starts working.